Hey guys, and welcome back to the arena to watch the Minions versus Literally Triggered. I'm joined by Jintan, and Jin, do you want to take away the Minions comp for us?
Yeah, the minions have Balgorn, Vindicator, Fleet Tempest, Magus, Pontifex, Double Deacon, Heretic, Vengeance, Purifier. And what have Literally Triggered bought here?
Literally Triggered have brought two Typhoon Fleet issues and a standard Typhoon, a Guardian, a Pontifex, a Confessor, a Vengeance, a Mauler, a Comet, and a Garma. So they've really tried to sprinkle in as many different types of ships as possible, so I have to read out the full list. And one thing I did want to mention before match start is that the Typhoon that Literally Triggered have brought has come in at the furthest possible distance of 50k, well behind the rest of his team, which I think is a great choice, as Typhoons aren't typically as tanky as their faction counterparts, which means that he's not really in harm's way back here, but still able to apply his full damage as this match now commences.
Something else interesting that it offers is it means that they have a really powerful utility option to prevent a backline dive on Park Bank. He's going to be able to throw out neutralizers or smart bombs, or at least a grapple to shield off frigates back there.
Yeah, we can see that webs are coming out now onto the Typhoon Fleet issues, presumably from this Balgorn, but now the Vindicator, I think, is also burning into range
Oh, here we
as
go,
well.
though. Those Tempest fleet, the heavy armor is just diving in here. They've really tackled down Jathy, and you can see the amount of DPS that's being poured in on him there with that attack bar lighting up from the minions.
Yeah, it's important to note that because the Typhoon Fleet issues and the Typhoon have a much further range, we're seeing a lot more damage coming out into this Tempest Fleet issue for now. But as the Vindicator gets on top of this Typhoon Fleet issue, I expect that the damage is going to ramp up and he's probably going to drop first.
Yeah, look at that. You can see that Zardath is holding there about 67. A few chunks starting to go there, but he's at 60%. And the chunks getting taken out of Jathy just don't, it's incomparable the amount of DPS that's getting put out there. He's going to go down here very shortly. And with that, Zardath might have a chance to stabilize. It's on literally triggered here now to make a play, to spread out and try and neutralize this rush here from the minions.
I think the important thing to note is that a Vengeance has died on the side of Literally Triggered, but there's no pressure coming out onto the minion support wing here. So the Purifier, again, I have to note it since we're going up against battleships, it's not having any issues. It's just kind of sitting pretty. Okay, now it's being burned on top of by a Typhoon Fleet issue. Purifier is sitting really close for what it is. It should probably be a little bit further away, but it does a lot of damage.
Yeah, especially when you can fit javelins and just fire from across the entire arena. That was some great play though there from Jathy, just squeezing out every last bit of EHP he possibly could from his Typhoon fleet issue, giving a chance for some structure damage there on Zardas. But it's not quite enough. You can see he's starting to rep up a bit of armor here as it looks like these Typhoons are on reload, and they're now switching off to the support wing as well, taking down Maddox and just treading the support wing really.
Yeah, some potential poor play coming out from the Literally Triggered side here. The Guardian of Literally Triggered is very effective at repping. In fact, reps more than an Ineris, depending on how it's fit. But it's sitting extremely far away from the Typhoon Fleet issue of JA, who burned away from the Minions battleship core. Apart from he burned in the wrong direction, so now his team is split, and he's separated by himself below the kind of planetary plane here.
Yeah, this is the power of that armor control comp too. If you spread out, they have so much ability to lock you in place and just DPS you down. This is great play here from the minions. It looks like Zardas is going to survive almost easily.
Yeah, I think that the Typhoons just came off reload again, so we're seeing some damage coming out into that Tempest Fleet issue, but with only one Typhoon still remaining and no other real damage dealers, I mean, the Mauler and the Confessor can do some damage, but probably won't stand up long against a Vindicator and Tempest Fleet issue if they get into range. So, yeah, I think it's a pretty solid win for the minions at this point, unless they end up boundarying somehow.
It looks like that Balgorn is burning across the field as well. He's about to probably have a huge impact here, just passing by the center of the field, which their frigates are just controlling, sitting there with the Federation Navy Comet, the Pontifex, all just tackled up and waiting for DPS to be applied to it when it's available.
Yeah, so we've seen that, this setup with the Guardian behind it, which, as I mentioned before, is probably one of the strongest remote wrapping logistics cruisers you can get. Losing to a double deacon setup. How do you feel about logistics cruisers in this format and the comps that we've seen so far.
They're really, really pricey. If you can execute with them, they're great. But man, it is so difficult, especially when you can put out so much potential threats by even foregoing logistics, as we've seen earlier on in the day with that triple Typhoon, triple Oracle composition. I,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I
I
think
don't
I'd
know.
have to agree. Yeah, I mean, I think that having those logistics frigates, even though we see a Gamma going down there, but with those logistics frigates, it may take up two slots on your team instead of one, but it leaves so many more points on the table for you to round out the rest of your team with things that are perhaps a little bit tankier instead of, as we're seeing the standard Typhoon fleet, rather just the standard Typhoon, which is paper tank. You can see it jumping up and down because it just doesn't have that EHP that the Typhoon fleet issues have.
Yeah, I have a controversial opinion, which is if you actually have a worse logistics pilot, putting them in a T2 logistics is better because they have so much survivability. And if you're able to chuck a bunch of rep drones on them, you can potentially get people to overcommit on them and still win the fight that way. But if you've got two really good individual pilots that can fly a logistics frigate well and always seem to slip out of trouble, those people are just, that is such an insane advantage.
I think I'd have to agree with that. I think that the logistics cruiser typically is also a lot slower than a frigate will be, and it has a much better range. So you don't have to worry too much about positioning, which is just an extra stress, right? That you add to your logistics frigate pilots, given the fact that they can only rep out to about 30 in optimal, perhaps like 20, 30 with some effectiveness. They're a lot squishier. They have to work in tandem. They have to communicate the entire time. These aren't things that you have to worry about when you're the only logistics pilot in that Guardian, which is slower, so you don't have to worry about positioning, tankier, and able to take those rep bots perhaps a little bit better as well.
Yeah, and it looks like this is going to be just a straight up slam dunk victory here from the minions. I thought they might lose Zardas at least, a token morale piece there for literally triggered, but this is some incredible stuff, and we don't have any conquest rules. So the minions are free to bring this composition again next time. So we might get a look at potentially what literally triggered thinks is a counter composition to this heavy armor control setup. And these are comps that both these teams have brought previously as well, so they seem to think that this is the baseline of the meta, perhaps.
Yeah, I think it might also be that they know what these comps do. They like to get some practice in these comps. Perhaps they're not the best comps that they think they can bring, but they're not comps that they're necessarily that they feel like they need to hide from the competition. So they're able to bring it in this open format, get some practice in with piloting, which I think is important as well. And I think the minions team and the literally triggered team, their comps give them enough opportunity to practice communication and piloting without having to do anything really tricky, right? They can practice screening, they can practice damage application or keeping range in a variety of different formats without giving away the game when it comes to the actual tournament itself.
Yeah, and it's been great fun to watch them bring out some interesting stuff though, because it hasn't just been wow. Okay, I think that was a boundary.
Yeah,
Yep,
you
that was a
tried to jump
boundary.
Edge of Glory, yeah.
All right, enough vamping. Let's head back to the studio and dissect this a little more.